Alright, hi guys. In my last video I described how I want to make Mirror's Edge 3, and I honestly didn't think I'd get so many well thought out comments. I mean, there were like 6, but still, these were some long ass essays. So before I get into this, I'd just like to thank the Mirror's Edge subreddit. I didn't think there'd be so much passion and so many nice people there. It was actually quite heartwarming to actually talk to people about video games. I mean, bloody hell, it's the reason why I made the series in the first place. But the internet's a thing, and you know what? Since the internet's a thing, I'm going to nerd out with random strangers instead. Enough sappy stuff, let's just get into the fan ideas for Mirror's Edge 3. From Black Ice U, the best Mirror's Edge story is Exordium, period. It's captivating and realistic without being melodramatic like Catalyst. Exordium deserved to be a game. I never really read a Mirror's Edge comic until this guy recommended Exordium to me, and it was honestly quite fun. However, Faith needs to be made more likable. She's the most unlikable piece of garbage I've ever seen in a comic. No wonder why she was so unlikable in Mirror's Edge Catalyst. She was, it's okay. I would love to get a game centered around this comic with some additional expansions and twists, so people that have read the comic can have that feeling of surprise. You guys are gonna hate me for using this example, but Iron Man 3 is what I'm talking about when changing comic story. No spoilers, but if you know what I'm talking about, I'm not sorry. Iron Man 3 is a good movie, and if done right, Mirror's Edge 3 could have a great plot. I argued in my last video that linear design would work better in a Mirror's Edge game. I got Lord Monsters giving me a great POV, and it was, you know what, quite nice. It was quite nice to see another point of view in this. Personally, I just think with such free movement, it would be nice to explore rather than have totally linear levels. One reason why I went back to explore Catalyst is because sometimes I just like to run around and explore the world with the option of doing side missions, runs, or finding collectibles. Like in Dying Light, you're just free to explore and do missions in your own time. I don't have an argument for why it's better, except I just like free roam. With the hub worlds thing, the closest thing that they are to that is probably the city districts such as The View, Reasoning, etc. At first I wanted to argue that a hub world could be compromising by traveling on low rooftops. However, I said it wouldn't be worth it to do the art style of the game. I don't think you would be able to make these hub worlds distinct enough, so it wouldn't even be interesting to look around them. Now let's talk about Dying Light as you use in your example. I want to mention that Dying Light doesn't focus on speed for most of your playthrough. It's a zombie survivalist game with parkour. It's not a parkour game. These have the same element but overall have different focuses. So while I see your point of view of free roam being enjoyable, I still think Mirror's Edge's functionality would work better within linear levels to make the game more fun. Again, I'd be happy to respond to your arguments in Reddit and the comments. I like that you can fight, and yeah, you can run away if you don't feel like it, but when you want to fight, I do find combat limited. I was surprised that the ability to use guns and perform disarms wasn't carried on to Catalyst, as if I was in a fight and I wanted to take the gun or at least get off the guy shooting me. I like the disruptor gadget as you could use it for escape or just stun your target. Combat is a bit clunky in my opinion, but then again, it isn't a combat game. I proceed to follow up the response, which is pretty self-explanatory. I was kinda surprised that they removed guns from the play in Catalyst 2. I do agree with your point of being able to disarm the enemy, but I don't think shooting would be in the game as it would remove the point of combat. Maybe enemies with guns you disarm, put out a baton and try to stun you in hand-to-hand combat instead. The disarm system was removed in Mirror's Edge Catalyst, which was understandable, as the opinion is that the first game's disarm system was as undeveloped as my autistic brain. However, I should move on. However, I want to argue for the disarm system to be brought back. People argue that grabbing guns just felt like dumb luck. However, I disagree. I have 75 hours in Mirror's Edge, and I just want to say, it takes time to do that consistently. It feels more satisfying than banging your anime body pillow, so I would love to see that disarm system brought back. I realize I'm the minority in this, so if they were to bring back the disarm system, they'd have to make it easier for audiences to be encouraged to play. Like I said, I realize I'm the minority here, and everyone was complaining how it felt like dumb luck, so I feel like that's the better opinion. Richard Harrison said, if the game mechanic is flow, I would like to achieve instant takedown animations as a reward for good level knowledge and timing. Guns can add something to the experience, but reliance on them will disturb the flow of movement. Personally, I limit them and employ snap aiming so the task of firing a weapon is instantaneous, and more importantly, be done on the move with accuracy. Lastly, the best part of Catalyst was the story, but having no leaderboards meant no reason to go back and improve or compete. This is what killed the game for me. Please guys, I mean, you guys have some crazy good responses, but you don't have any comments and it's really hard to read this out loud. I'm not gonna lie. Richard Harrison said that he would like to employ snap aiming to make the game feel more instantaneous, but yet again that removes the point of combat and does remove control from the player, which removes a bit of that immersion from the experience. So I personally wouldn't add that in, but like I said, I'm willing to fight you in the comment section. I love this community, it's so wonderful. A more interesting question, would multiplayer work for a Mirror's Edge game? I responded with I think co-op could work. I don't think multiplayer would, but co-op play or racing against friends could be a cool addition. I started to think about this more and I realized a 2-player racing game could be incorporated, but it isn't really necessary and is kind of made redundant by the time trials that were already in the game. So it's something that I'm already indifferent to. In the current state of Mirror's Edge, I'd much rather them focus on the single player campaign before they focus on anything else. This is the most interesting response I've gotten. I never got how people think first person is more immersive and the camera alone is what makes them think they're in the role of playing a character. This has happened 0 times in my 15 years of gaming. And really I think people are using the word wrong. You don't have to share the perspective of a player to be invested in the world. I was immersed in the world of Ragnarok Online despite the graphics being complete ass and the camera god damn it, I love this dude. And the camera looked at an overhead perspective. First person if anything is a handicap. Limits your sight, movements, etc. in a way that is exclusive to video games. In real life, your other senses help you be aware of your surroundings beyond your field of view. Your actions depend on your vision. In a game, none of that is there to help you. When you play a character in first person, you don't see the nuisances in the way they walk and animate. A third person game allows the player to show their personality in their movement. Take Watch Dogs for example. Aiden's movements are some of the most fluid and interesting in a while. His dash is aggressive and his cut sways with his momentum. I can extrapolate plot of his character through his movements, despite not seeing much of his dialogue or seeing most of his motivations. I can't do that with a first person character. Take Corvo from Sonic as an example. The vast majority of his personality is told through the other characters. You're quite vengeful only because the story says so, not because your actions are visibly showing them. Link from every Zelda game is another great example of how personality of a protagonist is shown, not told. Wind Waker being the best example with an art style that's extremely expressive. My point is, first person is far more limiting than third person. It's limiting in ways that affect the player's perception of character as well as gameplay. I feel in the vast majority of first person games, the character might as well not be there. Character's mind. Work on your I'm kidding. You're an observer looking through a window. The distinction is that the third person has you observing the character in their environment, and the gameplay treats it as your character belongs in the world and is aware of the environment. Many first person games feel disjointed because the character is treated as an outsider of the current world, mainly as a consequence of limiting the camera view. Imagine a movie was shot in first person, I'm pretty sure would exist. Every character would likely treat the main character in some inconsistent way with how they interact with other characters. It's because the writer/designer is aware that the camera is the audience, and the movie/game is modified to compensate. The result is a vastly inferior interpretation of the story. I can't believe I got such a this means so much to me. I'm not going to lie, with all due respect, I do disagree on this entirely. On your point on cutscenes, you can just switch the perspective from first person to third person to see the character interactions better. But let's go into the main problem with this. The main problem with switching the gameplay to first person and third person is that the mechanics of the game change. For example, running away from enemies is scary in first person as you're limited to only running in one direction. With third person, you can rotate with everything being in your perspective, which removes the tension of the chase. To compensate, you may want to remove the camera being able to be rotated, but not only does removing the camera often result in clunky gameplay in games that relate to speed, Sonic Unleashed. It removes the point of having a third person camera, and the point of a third person camera is to be able to see more of the world around you. The first person view at Mirror's Edge may be a limitation in your eyes, but personally I see it as a different perspective, whilst also being more suited to the gameplay functionality. Another point on the mechanics is that third person doesn't really give as much control as a first person game will offer when it comes to controlling humans. I haven't played Watch Dogs 1, I haven't played Watch Dogs 2, but it seems like Marcus runs slower so the player can have more control over the parkour. Mirror's Edge having speed as its primary pillar of gameplay, control is key here, so having a first person view is further suited. I use Sonic as an example of how clunky speed in the game can be if you're not running in a straight line. But in a game about controlling humans, I do disagree with your point. That being said, you and I are free to battle in the comment section once again. Huge thank you to everyone who gave me ideas. It's so wonderful. why do I say wonderful? It's not even a thing that's scripted. It's just something I say. Thank you for all the awesome ideas and all the awesome responses from you guys. I can't stop smiling. It's it's amazing. It means so much. This series is honestly like my creative outlet, obviously, and I'm really glad you guys are interacting with it. It means a lot more than you think. Now, my next video is going to be quite different. It's going to be a huge step from what I'm currently doing, and I really want you guys' opinions on it. It's nothing on Mirror's Edge. It's a little bit different from what I usually do. Yeah. Take care, guys.